just currently it's the whole everything. Right. See? It only took me 2 minutes to get there unless I said this. Thank you for calling me. I lost it out.
I'll take it.
Oh, I didn't lose it to you.
Dude.
I lost it to someone else. Unfortunately, it's taking the fire department. I can't call. He called me. Yeah, he called me. Actually, so we'll be off tomorrow.
My reading glasses in the car.
You got 4 minutes.
Run, little man, run.
How did you want to tee this up when we start, or just you want to do a quick intro as part of the public hearing, or?
Please.
Okay.
Sure.
What was I looking for? What day was this kicked back? Do you remember?
It's in my cover sheet in February.
February of this year? Where is it? All right, where is it? February of 13. You don't remember which one, do you?
What's that?
You don't remember which meeting in February, do you?
The first one was it's April. I may have had the wrong date. April 1st was the hearing date.
Uh-huh. So that would have been kicked back to us?
So in February, at the continuation meeting, they directed us to hold a, hold on just a second, I can give you the exact date. I'm sorry, I should have said April.
April 1?
Yep. I put February in there by accident. Sorry.
Come on, open up.
I know, but first of all, because what we already still has the other thing, and then all the stuff from Martin, Jennifer's original, all of my stuff got left out. We just have some oopsies.
Yeah, I got the motion. All right. Everybody ready? We hot? Tuesday the 9th. Call the January 9th, 2013 meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Roll call, please.
Here.
Here.
Here. I open this evening with a public hearing on the Historic District Overlay Boundary Adjustments. Mr. Schneider, would you please give us a synopsis of where we stand?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick history, and we'll get into the details quickly. The town's historic district was created in the late 90s, and many associated with the attempts by Disney to develop property outside of town. In kind of a whirlwind of activity at the time, it was decided just to incorporate the entire town into the historic district. In 2011, the council had considered amending that boundary to a smaller district. That was voted down. In the fall of 2012, The liaison for the ARB inquired about certified local government status. And during that discussion, it was, again, was it worth an exercise into shrinking the district to a more core district, encompassing a lot of the historic properties that do remain in town, as well as looking at the corridors. More recently, in April of this year, in February, the council directed that a joint public hearing be held in April by the commission and the council. Previous discussions from the commission had drafted a district which was essentially the stoplight and blocks either way. The commission sent it back to, or excuse me, the council sent it back to the commission after its April 1 meeting, or joint public hearing, saying to create a smaller district, but to still include the town's corridors into the district. So the amended boundary includes all 4 major corridors into downtown Haymarket and excludes most of the residential properties that are governed by homeowners associations. For those that are those are here that wish to see the map, it's back on the table. I've also drafted a resolution for the commission's use to support the recommendations. This has been notified pursuant to the state code requirements. All residents and all property owners within the district have been notified of this hearing. Subsequent to your recommendation, the council will hold a separate hearing and then decide whether or not to amend the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. At this point, I'd like to ask anybody who wishes to speak to the matter to please step forward, identify yourself, and name and address, please.
I'm Pam Swinford, 6852 Jackie Club Lane. I happened to be on one of those boards at one of the times when we had one of these other hearings. My recollection is it's about $500 a pop every time we have a public hearing. It's my tax money that's being spent every time we have one of these hearings and every time it's voted down. I don't see really any difference in this proposal that was in the proposal when I was there, when somebody else was there before me, when somebody else, this sounds like it's the 4th one. And the concerns were that, it's too much work for the ARB, things come up to them that they shouldn't have to do. There was no extra work. It didn't take any extra time. The amount of the things that come across that desk were minimal, especially for the housing areas. 1 square mile is not much. I don't understand why we keep spending money to try to change it. I'm obviously against it, have been. And my other concern is I'm not sure about that strip that's behind Green Hill Crossing that runs down Old Carolina. Do they have an HOA in those ranches? The ranches that run down this. That's not Green Hill Crossing right there.
Madison Street.
Mm-hmm. Do they have an HOA? Because they're right on the other side of my property fence. And I really don't need to see a 5-story purple house. The other concern is HOAs can dissolve at any time. Any community can choose to abolish their HOA. And then what? Then there's no rules and guidelines whatsoever about what can and cannot be done. So I don't think any of that's been taken into consideration, although I believe it was last time as well. It seems to be the same issue, different day. I don't understand why it continues to come up and why we continue to spend tax-paying money on having these hearings.
Susan Edwards, 6938 Little John Court. I'm against it. I've been against it. You've had all these businesses over time comply to all these rules, and everybody's complied. Probably over the years that I've been in this town, we might have had 2 or 3 complaints. The guidelines aren't that outrageous, and like Ms. Swinford said, we've spent so much money. It's like a group of small children that keep asking their mom the same question, hoping the 100th time you're going to get the answer you want. The residents don't want this. They want to leave it like it is. They want to protect their rights. We don't want to be another Gainesville.
Hello.
Hello, Natasha Sikorsky, 6811 Jefferson Street. My biggest issue is the properties that do not have an HOA. So specifically, of course, I'm here because it impacts me. Right behind my house, there's an empty lot that is owned by a developer that potentially, if that property were to be developed, they would not have any guidelines to follow. And the same thing with all of these houses that on Madison Court that do not have an HOA. So at minimal, I mean, it does sound like the town is definitely going with this smaller structure. And if that's the case, then I would say at minimally, it needs to be expanded so that if you don't, for residents, if there isn't an HOA, then they absolutely need to be governed by the ARB. Because then it's like, well, then what rules do they follow? That's my biggest concern.
Does anybody else wish to speak to the matter? Second call. Third, closed public hearing. Go on to our regular agenda. Announcements. I have none. You? Mr. Ring? None. Minutes. Do I have a motion?
A motion to approve the meeting minutes of our November 12th, 2013 Planning Commission meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. ARB update?
No update from the ARB?
Council?
Town's still here.
New business. Bylaws. I understand we have to revise them yet again.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there was, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, please start.
Subsequent, I think, to review, both the town manager and the town attorney had made additional suggestions for your consideration. It would simply be your decision or your discretion adopting those suggested revisions and adopting it with effective date of today rather than last month.
I'm assuming that we have to leave it open for 30 days and comment again. I have no issue with doing that. We'll just push it off
I can follow with the town attorney about it, but
to be safe.
Okay.
I mean, the requirement is 30 days, so we'll push it over to the next meeting, which would be, of course, there's no 2014 calendar. We'll push it over to the first meeting in January.
I think it's the
13th.
Yeah.
I can't see. If there's no objection, I would suggest we adopt the copy that's written on. Do you guys have the one that's got Martin's copy written on it for Martin's changes?
there's Brian's suggestion.
It's the annotated one?
Yes.
This one? Yeah. Any objection to doing that one?
There's actually two. There's the top that should say Brian's suggestions,
Yeah.
and then behind it is the town attorney's suggestions.
The town attorneys is already appended and revised. I've gone through them quickly. Excuse me. I've gone through them quickly, and by and large, it's mostly just syntax and semantics, but I don't have any issue with it.
Okay, yeah, in his copy, there was an error in Article 4 where it,
Article 4.
yeah, and the one that we had posted, but Martin's covers it.
Without objection?
Without objection.
Direct the clerk to have a copy handy for the public, and we'll set it for an agenda item at the January meeting for adoption. Parking ordinance review, Ms. Bear.
Why don't we invite Mark Schultz, starting on this one also, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last month, you considered amendments to the parking ordinance, specifically toward recreational uses in the town. When this came to the council this was associated with the ice cream. When it came to the council earlier this week, the council went ahead and directed us to review the parking ordinance in its entirety and bring them back a revised ordinance for their March meeting. Part of this had to do, I think this was a concern of the commission, we were piecemealing edits to our parking ordinance. Certainly a couple of challenges we're seeing today with the hospital and with the residential market coming back. We're starting to see renewed interest in the town, and a lot of the properties that are up for sale are being looked at for potential development. And one of the biggest challenges we're going to have is parking. There was a graduate study that was done on our parking ordinance several years ago, which suggested we were underparked in restaurant use. Service uses were about even with what the industry accepted. But we were also under or over parked in terms of our office uses. A couple other challenges we have too, we don't have on-street parking. We also don't have municipal parking, which creates challenges. We're driving people to have to park off-street, and certainly this is somewhat incompatible with our walking town theme that we're trying to achieve and the pedestrian-friendly issues that we're trying to achieve. Because there are larger implications beyond just the ordinance in terms of looking at perhaps having to look at some sort of municipal surface parking. Had time with the town manager and I talked with Commissioner Bear earlier tonight, is possibly getting a consultant to come in and review it in its entirety, update the survey that was done by the graduate student, do a survey of the amount of land we have undeveloped and what that parking would require in terms of reducing the amount of floor area that builders can achieve. That will also be a disincentive. If they have to overpark it, then they can't get the amount of square footage they need to redevelop. That's going to be a disincentive to doing the business there. So it seems like the time is right for us to do a comprehensive approach to looking at that. We also concurrently need to update our parking and transportation section of the comprehensive plan, and maybe this is something that we could get a couple of issues taken care of with one review. So we wanted to bring it to you for your consideration and toss around if it's something you wanted to look at, possibly getting some additional help on. We can work with the town manager, look at our spending policies, and decide whether or not we can make it work.
Just because of how the other things on our plate and how vast this is, because again, it's the chicken and the egg. We can review the parking ordinance, but if we don't have municipal parking, there's not, what's the point? We can revamp it, and then people are held to a standard they can't do if we don't have other parking options for them. So I think it has to be looked at as a whole. And I think the amount of time that would really take, I think we need to recommend to council to hire out a consultant.
More so than March, yeah. That's an aggressive time frame.
To be honest with you, I made no bones about it at the time, and I still don't make many bones about it now. I didn't put much stock in the graduate student survey, to be honest with you. It was high on theory and relatively low on the applied reality of the situation in the town. You're right, we don't have a municipal lot, we don't have any street parking, and we're sort of, well, it's not sort of, we are paying the price, we're paying the piper now for the impacts of the shared parking ordinance. It's coming back to haunt us, and will haunt us to an even greater degree once, if and when the Bloom complex is ever built out. We're going to be at a crisis point at that point in time, and I honestly don't know how we're going to deal with it. We're going to have to contemplate some rather serious changes in how we're addressing that parking issue in the near future. The long and the short of it is, without municipal parking, without street parking, we're really limited in what we can and can't do. Ordinance or not, I mean, if parking doesn't physically exist, I mean.
You have such funding mechanisms as in lieu parking fees.
Yeah.
That goes into a kitty, but then you have to have
the property to produce those, to construct it, and everything else.
Elsewhere within the town.
I mean, I think the other thing that we have to take into context too, and this came up several years ago when they were talking about a municipal lot, for lack of a better term. The current reality in our automotive-driven economy is that parking a block away is not going to really be an option for a lot of people, especially when you've got limited retail. If you had more retail in the area, perhaps, but who's going to want to walk a block just to get to the bank or to get to one of these office complexes or to get to the real estate company? You want to park next to the realtor. I mean, there's nothing to drive it. There's nothing to justify a municipal lot, at least not at present. Now, will that change? Possibly. We'll see. But until everything gets built out, it's kind of hard to justify it. I suspect that at the end of the day, if we hire a consultant, that's probably the best way to do it. That way, we've got a third party saying it. I'm all for it, because I got a feeling that they're going to, if they come at this and look at it from a realistic standpoint, given the limitations we've got, and given the lack of a retail environment, they may very well come back and say, no change is the change you need. And if you can put together I'm assuming we're going to need some sort of RFI. You might want to start with an RFI. Are we that pushed to do it? I mean, I don't see anything changing in the near future.
I think what we're saying is, certainly the firehouse site sold.
Yeah.
This gentleman wants to put a wine bar and a bakery in there. I mean, I don't think he's on an aggressive timeline, but that's a goal that he has. And that's going to be a parking challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, the first question that came out was, can they bring the bungalow down to provide parking that they need? That's the whole complex there. There's property across the street that's up for sale. One of the limitations of that is, if you want to get the retail development that will drive, the market, you have to be within a certain square footage. But if you're having to park that, it's going to be an issue.
That would be the property directly
The
across
Pay
the
Lane
street.
across from this.
I thought that had interior parking.
It does, but those people that reviewed that plan felt it's unattainable. Just that was so overbuilt and so unparked. I think other plans that folks are looking at are not as intense, but still wanting to capture as much as they can of the streetscape to get that high visibility, but they're going to be limited by the amount of
By
parking.
the surface area they've got, unless they go underground or unless they two-story it. Which I guess they could do if they did an interior, but then you run into lot coverage issues and all that.
Yeah, two-story again, you have to park it. So I think even the Winterham folks are having to reconsider how they develop that site. And certainly the largest lot we have left is the fairgrounds property. And what will that be in terms of parking? So,
Where's Guy? There he is.
Just listening.
Hope you're listening to that.
We're here.
In that case, again, if there's no objection, I would just have us task Marchant with putting together a draft, your pick, RFI or RFP.
do you mind if I work with the town manager?
That's fine with me. And deliver an RFI or an RFP for contract support on this to the town council, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Although there will be some expenditure of funds for it. I guess I can justify it, and if we need to, I guess we need to get a third-party professional opinion on it. I suspect nobody's going to like what the opinion is, but at least it'll be in writing, and nobody can complain that way. So let's kick that can down the road a little bit, even though I don't like doing that. But
I can, for lack of a better term, I can plagiarize ordinances with the best of them. But we really need the analysis, I think, as part of this to really push an ordinance.
I don't know that plagiarizing anybody else's ordinance is going to help, because I don't think anybody has the unique circumstances that we do.
And I think that's where most of our ordinance is from anyway, and that's where we're having the hiccups now. So
We did get rid of the shared parking ordinance, correct?
That was amended out of the ordinance. Yes. Okay. We'll take that direction as to work with the town manager for the RFI or RFP, whichever is the appropriate mechanism to look at the parking ordinance and the analysis that's necessary.
Yep.
Send that to the council for their action,
Yep.
and then we'll move forward. Okay.
Anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Old business, historic district overlay boundary amendments. We've had this for what, a year and a half now? Give or take?
yeah, I mean, the planning commission sent it forward unanimously. Council has sent it back with a majority in favor of shrinking the district. The reason we keep having to have public hearings is where we tweak it here and there.
Yeah. The motion from the April meeting was motion to send the historic district overlay back to the planning commission for them to draft a formal resolution for a small historic district with due consideration of all four entryways into the town for corresponding review as they see fit. I think the issues at the point in time were the entrance corridors at all 4 points, and the frontage property. If I recall correctly, the frontage property is on 55. Am I missing anything?
I don't think so.
Ms. Bear, your comments.
I mean, the changes, quite honestly, from the original proposal are so minimal that, I have the same opinion that the smaller district is appropriate.
Well,
I think the smaller district is appropriate for all of the reasons stated, and some of the things that are still yet to be determined, particularly in terms of achieving grants through different programs, et cetera. And the original, this is, what's before us tonight, is not a significant change. It just includes some of the very small percentage of the properties that are HOAs friendly, but it doesn't, which brings in the frontage on 55, which is appropriate.
Yeah, and this map actually added 2, not took away more. So,
I'm going to address a few things and a couple of questions that came up. The principal issue that drove this from the get-go, and which became clear again when the local government, certified local government came up, it's a matter of enforceability, and quite frankly, the statute as it's currently written, we've been told by 3 different attorneys, is likely to fail a legal challenge.
I think, if I may clarify that, Mr. Chairman, is that our district as it stands today is legal. It's the question of would it meet today's ordinances or state code to enact the district? Unlikely. I guess one of the challenges you would have is once you shrink it, it's going to be harder to get properties back in. So right now, it's probably what you want to call a non-conforming district in terms of how it was created. Again, sorry to repeat myself. You wouldn't be able to create, having so many non-contributing resources in the district would create a challenge. Probably would look somewhat similar. But that's the challenge that we're facing again. And it's reminding you, once you take them out, you can't put them back in.
A couple of other issues. HOAs are generally almost impossible to dissolve in the state. It has happened. It's very infrequent.
Here in the town, it's harder.
It's even
because
harder.
the town has in its subdivision ordinance when they were planned out to begin with, because there's stormwater and other things.
Yeah,
they learned that lesson from 18th century.
Yeah.
So, if Longstreet wanted to dissolve, the town would have legal on its side to make sure it didn't happen.
As far as height issues, those are covered by the zoning ordinance and not by the ARB text, and I don't think anybody on this group or any town council in the near future is going to amend the height restrictions to a greater height, especially in the residential area. The changes largely do not affect the businesses in town, but especially those that have complied. The only businesses that it generally impacts are those in the industrial area, which, quite frankly, haven't been required to do anything. It would be very difficult to bring into concordance, especially given their industrial nature. Madison Avenue, I'm torn. For me, it's a control versus property rights issue. Those houses existed long before the ordinance did.
Well, we were torn on multiple reasons.
Yeah.
It was, they don't have an HOA, but it's also not contributing resources to the historic district. And we were looking at the pros versus the cons. And
so, if there's no further comment, call for the vote. Roll call, please. Oh, wait a minute. I gotta make the motion. Bear with me. I gotta read this one. I left my reading glasses in the car. Note this is Planning Commission Resolution RES 2013-1209, a resolution recommending amendments to the Code of Haymarket, Virginia, Chapter 58, Article 14, Old and Historic District, Haymarket District Overlay. Whereas the town of Haymarket, in order to preserve the unique cultural heritage of the town, has established an overlay district known as the Old and Historic Town of Haymarket, which includes all that area which lies within the corporate limits of the town, subsection 58-553, and whereas the town has enacted Article 14, Old and Historic Haymarket Haymarket District Overlay, pursuant to the Code of Virginia, subsection 15.22306 as amended, for the purpose of imposing special requirements in addition to those requirements pertaining to the underlying zoning in the town, in order to protect and perpetuate those areas or structures which are of historic, architectural, or cultural interest, per section 58-552A, and whereas the regulations imposed in this district are intended to protect against destruction of or encroachment upon such historic resources, to encourage uses which will continue to preserve them, and to prevent the creation of adverse environmental influences, per 58-552B. And whereas in its administration of the ordinance, the Planning Commission has concluded that the Old and Historic Haymarket District Overlay includes areas or structures which are not of historic, architectural, or cultural interest to the town. And whereas a majority of those areas or structures which have been determined not to be of historic, architectural, or cultural interest to the town are either subject to restrictive covenants of a homeowners association or are not otherwise contiguous to an arterial street within the town, Washington Street and Jefferson Street. And whereas the amending the boundary of the Old and Historic Haymarket District Overlay to exclude areas or structures which have been determined not to be of historic, architectural, or cultural interest to the town will reduce the number of certificate of appropriateness applications required to erect, reconstruct, alter, restore, or raise a building within the Old and Historic Haymarket District Overlay per section 58-554. And whereas reducing the number of certificate of appropriateness applications will result in a cost savings to the town through a reduction in time and resources required to process such applications, as well as to reduce a duplicative layer of regulation imposed on homeowners subject to an HOA. And whereas the Planning Commission pursuant to Section 58-425 held a public hearing on December 9, 2013, and has recommended that the Old and Historic District overlay boundary be amended, and whereas the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practice are served by amending the Old and Historic Haymarket District overlay, now therefore be it resolved that the town of Haymarket, pursuant to Article 11, Chapter 58 of the Code of Haymarket, does hereby amend the text of Section 58-553 and replace with the attached text and Old and Historic Haymarket District overlay map dated. Somebody, can you read that?
12/9/13. That's this map right here.
Yeah, it's dated December 9, 2013.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one edit. I'm sorry. Wouldn't therefore be resolved. It should be that the Planning Commission
Oh, I'm sorry. Planning Commission.
does hereby recommend
Okay.
amendments to the text of. Sorry. I plagiarized that from something else.
I wondered about that. The pursuant to Article 11, no, because that is hereby.
Recommend amendments to the text of 68-553 and replace the attached text and associated old.
I amend my motion as such. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Which takes us to the comp plan. Where do we stand?
To be honest with you, we're putting in a holding pattern. Part of it was looking at the historic district. We're continuing to just kind of eat away at it as we can. I know I've promised you earlier deadlines.
Do you have those edits to the first sections that we edited?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I'd like to see those edits. Quite frankly, I've forgotten what the edits were.
I can get those to you. Again, I wasn't looking at
Can you send that to
overhauling.
everyone?
Yeah.
You
We
know,
weren't-
everything we've done so far.
I'm sorry. That's what
We weren't looking at it overhauling it entirely. We kind of divided the work amongst the staff. I know Denise is taking care of the historic district stuff. We have Holly working on the transportation sections. I believe Jen is working on updating a lot of the charts that are in there, so we're slowly making progress. The bulk of it will just be looking in, going into the text and changing it. So we are getting busy. We're starting to see some of these applications come in, and like with the parking ordinance, it's helpful to get as much help as we can. So I'll continue to update as we make progress, and I'll send you out what we have today. So
one other question. Why do I still have a special use permit for Haymarket self-storage in the file?
you shouldn't. So
Is it,
you disposed of it already.
we already
So
have?
we'll get it out of there. So.
Anything further?
I don't have anything further, Mr.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Here for more, Sue?
So I don't have to yell.
And the microphone?